Coming to you live from New Jersey, it's the Hand Plus podcast brought to you by Movie Changeup, where each week I, Joseph Fricky, and my co host Tristan Mayer break down this week in streaming. We kind of go through each of the streaming services and let you know, hey, this is what you should be watching, this is what you should be avoiding. And slowly, as we progress, this is our 13th episode. We're kind of figuring out, hey, what's the format of the show? How are we going to go? And I think slowly we're realizing, hey, maybe we shouldn't watch the same things. Maybe as far as maybe the big things go, like Andor, when House of the Dragon comes back, we'll both watch that. But as far as everything else, I think we're going to try to actually spread out a little bit more and try not to actively watch the same thing. So help us cover more content, and I think that's going to be the way of the future. And if you don't know, the name of our podcast, Hand Plus, comes as kind of an acronym of the more popular streaming services: HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Disney Plus, and all your other favorite streaming services. And with that, Tristan and I, you have a little bit differing views on how this week in streaming went. Maybe it's because we watched different things. I think this was kind of a weak week in streaming, and you thought this was a fairly strong week in streaming, especially I think when it comes to Netflix content, which is one thing I really didn't watch as much, a service I didn't really watch as much this week, so that may be why. But yeah, if you want to talk real quick about just kind of your week in streaming.
Yeah, I definitely feel it was a better week than I think you did because I thought it was an impressive week. A lot of stuff that I was had low expectations for ended up really impressing me, and there was also stuff that I had kind of high hopes for and ended up being better than I thought it was going to be. So everything I watched this week, I was impressed by, whether it was something I thought was going to be bad that turned out to be pretty good, or something I thought was going to be pretty good that turned out to be like really great. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about what I watched this week and hear what you watched that let you down so much.
All right, yeah, nothing really like let me down. There wasn't much I watched where I was like, or really anything I watched that this was bad, but nothing really came out and surprised me. I think the best thing I watched this week is something we're not even going to talk about is Andor, or something we just kind of wait until the arcs have ended to really talk about those. But with that, let's kind of go a little bit out of order, and let's kick it off with the thing I never thought we would ever talk about on this show, and that is the Roku channel. Something dropped that completely missed our top 10 list, even though we knew it was coming out. I think we kind of forgot because when I create my top 10 list at the end of every month, I go through and I just Google upcoming streaming on all of the major streaming services, and I forgot that the Weird Al Yankovic movie was coming out, and I forgot to look up Roku channel drops. And obviously, I kind of spoiled it already, but we're gonna kick it off by talking about Weird, the Al Yankovic movie. It's kind of a, I don't even know what I would call it. It's a parody of biopics starring Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame as Weird Al Yankovic. And I think the first trailer made you kind of think, oh, they're just doing a Weird Al biopic. Okay, he's super popular in the 80s and 90s and a little bit into the early 2000s. And then around the second trailer, when that came out, is when you realized, oh, they're doing a parody of biopics. And that's what this is. It's not true to his life at all. It's kind of using a very tiny basis of his life and making it seem and making a parody of biopics. Tristan, what were your thoughts on Weird the Al Yankovic movie?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I didn't know what this was going to be going into it because I knew it was Weird Al, and I know Weird Al, he makes his parody songs, so I figured that he's going to do essentially like a parody cover of a biopic, and that's exactly what this is. I was really impressed by this. I know it's kind of getting buried because it's on the Roku channel. I think that's going to ultimately hurt this movie a lot, but I felt like if this dropped on Netflix or on Amazon Prime, this could be like a really, really big hit, and honestly could get Daniel Radcliffe like his Golden Globe win by a mile. I think he does a great job embodying Weird Al in a way because he doesn't look anything like Weird Al. He looks way different from him, but I think that plays into the fun of it, just grabbing this random famous actor and having him play a character who doesn't look anything like in the biopic. And yet they play into the cliches a lot, of what biopics are, and it only escalates as it goes along, right? So the beginning, it's like he's getting denied by his parents to he wants to play the accordion, he wants to like pursue fake covers of songs, but his parents are like, oh, that's the devil's music, you can't let that in our house. And this like the raging parents who are refusing to like accept the son's creativity. And there's even a scene where he goes to a party with his friends in high school, and they pull out an accordion and start playing like it's essentially a bong they're passing around to their friends to get like a little hit off of the accordion. It's like a really tongue-in-cheek biopic, and I had a great time watching this because it's so tongue-in-cheek. They never like look at the camera and tell you that it's a joke. It's just played straight for the entire time. There's so many great biopic parody moments in here, like when you think of the scenes in biopics where they go to a party and there's a bunch of celebrities at the party to make little cameos of celebrities that and this plays that up with a bunch of cameos from celebrities that are like scattered across decades that make no sense to be at a party together, but they're all here for the cameo, and I think that's really fun. And it just escalates. I don't want to spoil beyond like that first act, but yeah, once you go to the beat of like getting into Hollywood and pursuing his music career, it becomes just so ridiculous and so absurd. I had a great time with this, and I think if you're a Weird Al fan, you're gonna love it. But I'm not a Weird Al fan really, and I loved it. I know his iconic songs, but I don't really follow his career. I don't know his life story. I just thought this was a really fun comedy parody of a biopic, and Weird Al is a perfect voice to be telling that story.
Yeah, so to be perfectly honest, I didn't get all the way through it, mainly because I turned it on with the intention of like I'll watch it until I fall asleep and then I'll pick it up the next day, but I didn't have time really to pick it up the next day. So I've only seen the first 45 minutes of it, so I don't think I got really to where like the act you were talking about when he gets into Hollywood. And I didn't know if I was fully gonna ever get back to finishing it because I wasn't as into it as I thought I was going to be. But you saying okay, it picks up and gets weirder and wilder as it goes, I think makes me feel like I need to go back and get into it because I
Yeah, within
do.
the first 10 minutes, you think it was a pretty straight biopic, but as it's going moment by moment, scene by scene, you're starting to like pick up on the joke a bit, and as it's amping up every arc, you know.
Yeah, and the one my favorite thing is like Daniel Radcliffe is basically talking in his standard kind of American accent. You know, it's just sound his voice, and then he's very clearly just lip syncing to Weird Al's voice when it comes to the music, and it's just very a very different sounding voice where it's very clear and obvious that he's lip syncing.
That's a hilarious parody because that happens so much in some of these biopics, like Bohemian Rhapsody. I think is something they drew on this a lot for the parody, and that's one where you can tell Rami Malek is not singing on the screen right now. And yeah, it's very funny. Daniel Radcliffe, it sounds like Daniel Radcliffe, and then as soon as he starts singing, it's just Weird Al's voice. It's very funny.
Yeah, yeah, definitely one that I feel like if you are a Weird Al fan, I know I wasn't trying to give it like the hardest sell, but I think if you are a Weird Al fan, it's definitely worth checking out. And I think if you're just a comedy movie fan and want something a little different, it's worth checking out. It gives me a lot of vibes of Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Yeah, it's a perfect movie to kick off like the award season. You know, we're gonna get plenty of like the Oscar Beatty biopics in the next couple of months. You know, trying to make you cry
Mm,
over some historical moment, and this is a nice little fun way to kick that off and remind yourself that it's not that serious.
yeah. All right, and moving on, we got HBO Max, and I'll kick that off. The one thing I watched, it's been on HBO Max for about a month, but I think people are slowly realizing that it's out there. It's something that wasn't fully on my radar, but enough people recommended it to me that I'm like, hey, I should check this out. And that's See How They Run, which is a pretty solid, fun Who Done It. It kind of gives me what if Knives Out was made by Wes Anderson a little bit. It's set kind of in the old night. It's set in like around the 1950s, I think, west end of London, and it's got a pretty stacked cast. It's got Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan, Adrian Brody, David Oyelowo, Harris Dickinson, who people might recognize from The Kingsman that came out, I believe, last year. And it's not. I'm not gonna sit here and be like it's as good as Knives Out. But if you watch Knives Out and you're a fan of Who Done It, this is that, but it's slightly more comedic. Definitely very meta. Um, Kind of reminds me of like a Seven Psychopaths version of a Who Done It. I think you're gonna enjoy it a lot more if you're a big Agatha Christie fan because there's a lot of homages and references to um, her work. Basically, the premise is uh, someone was murdered behind the scenes of the play version of The Mousetrap, which is based on an Agatha Christie work. And so I definitely, like I said, I definitely think if you're a whodunit fan, or if you just like big kind of ensemble, or it's not Hollywood, but it is kind of that style, like an old Hollywood type movie, I definitely would recommend it and check it out. It's a really quick watch. It's like 98 minutes, I think, is the runtime. I
Yeah,
breezed right through it.
I'll definitely be checking that out. It sounds like something I would be a fan of. I'm a fan of murder mysteries. I really like the Agatha Christie kind of tone and aesthetic. I actually enjoy the kind of Brana Agatha Christie adaptations, even for a lot of their flaws, and especially in their cast. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. It sounds like something I would really enjoy, and it wasn't on my radar until you brought it up, so I can't wait to watch it.
All right, yeah. And I believe on HBO Max you watched season 2 of White Lotus.
Yeah, White Lotus first season was a huge critical hit. I think it was like the biggest miniseries in terms of the amount of wins at the Emmys ever. So I really was looking forward to what they're going to do in the second season. I didn't watch the first season, but when I heard it was an anthology series, I thought, oh, I might as well just kick it off with the second season and see how I like it, and then see maybe I'll go back and watch the first. And I'll tell you, my first impression is that I can't wait to go back and watch the first season because I'm really liking this so far. It's a really compelling. It's almost similar to what you mentioned, a murder mystery, kind of an Agatha Christie-esque setup where it's set at this really elaborate White Lotus resort. You know, like a really expensive hotel where the richest of the rich will go to work there, to stay there. And this one is located in Sicily. I think last season it was in a different country. So the kind of it seems like the anthology of it is that's going to be set at various White Lotus resorts across the world. And this one is set in Sicily, and it's a kind of a comedy murder mystery drama about all these egotistical rich people and their kind of dramas and their tensions between each other. And the premise here is that from the opening scene, you see that a bunch of guests at the hotel have been killed. They're laying dead across the beach, and it's kind of a mystery of like how did these people get killed? What were the escalations that brought all these guests at the hotel to be murdered in Sicily? And then it flashes back to the escalating tensions of all these people arriving and kind of connect. You get the drama of connecting them to each other. So very Agatha Christie in that kind of character connection murder mystery thing. The first season had a pretty stacked cast. This one is not as stacked, but you have F. Murray Abraham, a really prolific character actor. You have Jennifer Coolidge. You have Aubrey Plaza and Theo James are in it. You have some nice recognizable faces that pop up here for sure. People that are hopefully trying to aim for some Emmy wins next year because the first one was such a huge Emmy win a couple of months ago. So I'm into it so far, and I can't wait. I'm gonna definitely go back and binge watch the first season. And I'm not sure if there's any plot connections so far because I wouldn't know if there were, but I'm not having any problem following season 2 at all. It doesn't have any connection to me where it's like I had to know this or that from the first season. So I'm having a great time with it so far, and I think you'd like it a lot, Joe. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on it.
All right, yeah, and I would just want to say, speaking of familiar faces, if you're a big time Survivor fan, you may recognize some faces that Tristan didn't because showrunner, creator of the show, Mike White, was he made the final 3 on his season of Survivor, and he was a known writer before then. He had written and co-starred in School of Rock, and he partially used his experience. He said he used his experience on Survivor in creation of this show, of like the strategy and kind of the desert island feel and all that. And anyways, he cast a few of his Survivor castaways from his season. Had small kind of just visual cameos in the season 2 premiere. So
That's cool. I did not know that connection. I knew that Mike White had that connection to Survivor. I was hoping you'd be the one to bring that up. I'm glad you did, Joe. You called me on that. But yeah, I'm liking it so far. And yeah, he writes and directs every episode of the first season and the second season. So it's cool that you get to see like a very hands-on miniseries like that, where it's a very much a one-person story and idea come to life.
all right, yeah. Anything else you would say about White Lotus?
No, I can't wait to watch it. I'll probably come back and talk about it once the second season is done, or maybe like halfway through the second season or so. Especially if you pick up on it and start watching it. But yeah, I can't. If you guys are watching it, definitely let me know what you're thinking. Some of your theories down there. I'm hoping to get into the theory zones. I already have some theories bubbling up in my head, so I can't wait to see how the season plays out.
All right. Would you say it kind of has some Knives Out vibes?
Knives Out for sure. The way that Knives Out was like satirical, in a way that it was about the characters, but they also represented some ideas. It was very much about like conflict and Twitter conflicts and those kind of things. And this is a satire of those like medial conflicts that we treat as very important. Very much like Knives Out.
All right, because my girlfriend really loved Knives Out, so if I can tell her it's like Knives Out, then I can probably convince her to watch this.
You can. It's definitely something I think she would like. If she was a Knives Out fan, it's perfect for her.
All right, cool. And I believe that wraps up our HBO Max discussion and moves us on to Amazon Prime. And I believe you watched a little bit of, if not all of, the Harry Styles starring movie My Policeman.
I did. This is one that back early last year, when we were starting to look forward to this year in movies, it was buzzing a tiny bit for maybe Harry Styles is going to get an Oscar nomination out of this. If you don't know, it's set in 1950s England, and Harry Styles is a lead in it as a gay policeman who's in the closet in 1950s because, of course, if he comes out, he's not going to be able to live the life he wants to live as a policeman. So he is married to Emma Corrin, who you might know from the last season of The Crown. She played a younger version of Princess Diana in The Crown last year. She's his wife, and he's also having an affair with uh, his friend Tom, played by Linus Roach, and you're also at the same time getting a bit of a layer where there's a future, there's them, 30 years or so in the future when they're kind of in their old age, looking back on this experience and thinking back, like, what did I do wrong? Looking back on your life as anyone does, and they're looking back on this romance and kind of you have that melancholic tone of them looking back, but you're kind of watching this play out and figuring out like how did this relationship go and how is it ultimately going to play out 30 years down the line too. So that's kind of a fun layer to it. But it's an interesting setup. I think the fact that it's set in the 1950s and it has that really kind of realistic look at what it's like to be stuck in the closet in a time when it was very hard to be stuck in the closet. It was not like it is now where it's much easier to come out. It's not easier for everyone, but we're in a much more accepting time than we were in the 1950s, especially when someone was a police officer. So I think you get a really interesting perspective on that. It's also really well shot and really kind of tightly shot. Ben Davis shot this, who shot a bunch of really great stuff, a bunch of the Avengers movies, the Guardian MCU movies. So he got to do this kind of smaller scale movie. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it, the flaws here fall onto Harry Styles. I think he's really tried this year to make himself a movie star between this and Don't Worry, Darling. And I think both of these have unfortunately shown that he's maybe not a movie star. I think he works in a supporting roles. I think he works well as like a smaller part of the cast. But when he's put in the lead and he's meant to carry like the emotion of a scene against a really talented, really acclaimed actor, he just doesn't stand up to that caliber. When you're watching Don't Worry, Darling, and he's face to face with Florence Pugh, he's just not on that level. And I think you have that similar problem here, where he's good, but when he's facing against award-winning, classically trained actors and actresses, he's not that good.
Yeah.
And I think if you're into the premise, especially if uh, you love Harry Styles and you just want to see some hot steamy Harry Styles romance, there's some hot steamy Harry Styles romance in here, and you have a cool premise of like the wife is aware of the fact that he has this relationship with another man, and rather than being confrontational, she's kind of trying to figure out a way to make that relationship work, but for all three of them. And I think that's a really interesting setup for the movie too. It's a different premise than always trying to hide it from his wife the whole time, and she's being gaslit into thinking that it's not true. They're kind of on the same page in a way of the relationship, so that's really interesting. But I don't, yeah, not going to be getting Harry Styles' his Oscar from this. And unfortunately, I think between this and Don't Worry, Darling, even though I thought both were all right, neither one of them blew me away. And I think that Harry Styles' days as a leading man might be kind of numbered.
All right. Yeah, it doesn't sound like the type of movie I would go for just because it's like, okay, if the lead's not great, I'm not really into, hot Harry Styles, steamy romance. Not the type of movie. But there's a lot of people, especially you go on Twitter, that would be into a hot, steamy Harry Styles romance. So if you're into it, check it out. But I don't know if I'm going to be, with all the content out there to watch, I don't know if My Policeman is what I'm going to be going out for.
No, I don't think, unless it's something that you're interested in premise wise, it's not going to be something to put on your radar now.
Yeah. All right, and I think that moves us out of Amazon Prime. Not a whole lot dropped this week, not a whole lot to watch, and moves us into Netflix, where we have some news. We're getting a Gears of War, I believe, the animated series, as well as a Bioshock movie. And so, Tristan, my question for you is: are we finally entering the video game takeover? I think I predicted for a while that I think by 2030 the superhero movie genre won't be gone, it won't be dead, but I think it will be taking a backseat to the video game takeover. Do you think my prediction will hold true?
I think you're absolutely correct, and I think streaming and series like this is the reason that's going to happen. When you look at streaming shows, you have the comic book stuff, but that's not necessarily taking off as hard as I think that a lot of them were hoping that it would. Even on Netflix's side, they had Sandman. They renewed Sandman for season 2, which I'm really excited to finally catch up on season 1 now that I have my hopes restored for I'm not going to get let down again. But yeah, I think that video games are going to be a really exciting new IP. I think the Gears of War animated series is a really good move for Netflix. They have Arcane, that was a huge hit for them. They have Castlevania, that was a huge hit for them. So I think when they take this adult-oriented animation and video game style, I think that is working really well for them. They have an audience for that, so I bet that'll be a big hit for them. And a Bioshock movie, I love Bioshock. It's one of my favorite video games and really narratively rich, really compelling world. So I think if Netflix puts the money behind that and makes it like something worth watching, and they're going to have a really big run here. Last of Us on HBO Max, that's something coming out in just a couple of months. So yeah, I can't wait. I love video games. I love movies and TV. So let's see it. Let's see it all combined, Joe. All the things I love into one conglomerate of thing. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I want.
And The Witcher, hey, it added a Hemsworth brother. That's cool. Everyone is super excited and happy about that. So,
Yeah, you know, there's no drama there at all.
yeah.
Nothing, nothing happened there.
All right, and then some other piece of news, something we were going to speculate and talk about. They're kind of rebranding the Jeffrey Dahmer show and kind of saying the new brand of it is Monster, and that is season one, and they will be making season two focusing on different kind of people in, I don't know if they said American history or just history in general, that kind of are monsters and shaped history. And I feel like it's probably going to be more in the serial killer murder type path. I don't really think they're going to be like, oh, Genghis Khan or anything like that. That was like just like a warlord. I think it's going to be a lot in the Jeffrey Dahmer. And we're kind of speculating. I want to talk a bit about who we think we could see as the focus of season two. I'll start by dropping a name that I think is someone that we all know about, and there's maybe a couple documentaries about, but I don't think there's really like a narrative take on their story, and that's John Wayne Gacy. Uh, I think it's a name, especially our age, a name we kind of grew up knowing. Oh, he dressed as a clown and he lured kids, and everyone in the town loved him. And I think we weren't gonna cast all of them, but as soon as I thought John Wayne Gacy as someone to focus on, the first name to pop into my head as an actor is Paul Walter Hauser. I think could crush a role like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good casting for it. And yeah, if you're gonna go the serial killer route, that's definitely one to take. We've had documentaries and things like that, but we haven't seen him actually played out as a narrative. So I'm behind that pick if they're gonna go with a serial killer route.
All right, is there a name or anyone in mind you had thought of for a season two?
Yeah, I actually came up with like a top five list of
All right.
people I'm hoping to. Maybe not in season two because they said they're gonna do at least two more seasons. I think I got picked up for two seasons, so I have my wish list
All right.
here.
I'll
I'll
let
go
you,
over the first one.
I'll let you give your top five, and if I match on any of them, I'll let you know, and then any others that I thought of, I'll talk about after.
Yeah, I went in a different route for you actually because I tried to do a variety. I thought sure they're gonna do serial killers, but I would also like to see them take that concept of someone who was a monster who impacted history and take that a little bit more loosely. So my first pick is if they go the serial killer route, I would love to see a Jack the Ripper take. We've gotten kind of shows about him here and there, but we haven't really gotten like a proper big budget Jack the Ripper story, and I think that would be cool. And I think the fact that it's set so far in the past could help remove them from like the drama that came up this time of the victims' families are still alive, and they're still dealing with this trauma. No one who was involved with Jack the Rippers is going to be alive right now, So you don't got to deal with the fact that it's still a fresh wound for a lot of people. I think that would be an interesting setting too, because it would be set, in a period piece, which would be a different take than, well, I guess Dahmer is kind of a period piece, it's not contemporary.
Yeah, what do we consider a period piece at this point? Probably anything before 1980 ish. Like I don't look at Stranger Things as a period piece. I mean, obviously there's like sci-fi aspects to it, but I think anything pre 1980 I would kind of consider a period piece.
I also think if they're gonna go for the evil corporate CEO route, I have a couple of suggestions. I think it would be really fun to do a Mark Zuckerberg season. I know David Fincher did Social Network, but he's talked a lot about wanting to revisit that because the Facebook story has gotten so much bigger and more complex than it was in 2010 when he made that movie. So I think you could tell that story in a very very long, a compelling way in a long form narrative. I think you could tell this Facebook's origin, but that's only part of Facebook at this point, right? We've seen the Facebook's success and then also this kind of like downfall of Facebook. So I think we could get like a rise and fall of Mark Zuckerberg in a season.
All right.
I also think it would be fun if you're gonna go for a historical figure, Vlad the Impaler. The Dahmer show was the Dahmer show was known for like some brutality, like Dahmer was known for like all the violence and the brutality. I think Vlad the Impaler known for torturing and really his brutal ways of torturing people. I think that would be something that Ryan Murphy could get a lot of gleeful terror out of. I think that would be something that would be fun. I think a controversial one maybe, but I know that Ryan Murphy is friends with Monica Lewinsky, so I think if he wanted to be a bit of a rebel, he could do a season about Bill Clinton
That'd be
or some kind
wild.
of political figure. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, he did these political things I didn't like or whatever, but it's like, I think it would be fun to get a darker look at a president that people kind of like still, but did a lot of shady things back in his day, you know? And the fact that Ryan Murphy is friends with Monica Lewinsky, she's produced other stuff with him before. It could be interesting if she produced this with him. And we got like Monica Lewinsky's perspective on Bill Clinton.
All right.
And lastly, I have one to throw in here. Uh, I think with all the headlines going on about Starbucks and the attempts to unionize Starbucks, I think it would be fun to do a Howard Schultz season. Give me one about just a greedy billionaire getting greedier and greedier. You know, give me a Wolf of Wall Street kind of take on a monster. You know, someone who just wants to get super rich and screw everybody over if he can to get there. You know, buying all the companies he can get. That kind of a story would be kind of a different take on a monster, I think, but one that would be kind of fun, especially later on if they do this for a couple of different seasons and they try to get more liberal with a take on what a monster might be.
Yeah, I like a lot of those picks as far as diversity of picks. I just struck pretty much straight serial killers, but you saying Bill Clinton gave me an idea for a season, and I'll drop that at the end. So one I had thought of was one that's fairly recent, and that's probably why there hasn't been much on them. Obviously, a few documentaries, and that's the BTK killer. But I feel like with a lot of my picks, you could probably have the same problem you have with that they had with Jeffrey Dahmer. It's like the families of the victims may not want it made. It's drawing up old wounds. And another one I thought of a little bit older, a name people may not know, but there's really, as far as I know, been like no big main fictionalized, or not fictional, but narrative version, and that's Ed Gein, who basically was the inspiration for Hannibal Lecter, the inspiration for the Silence of the Lambs novel, inspiration for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I don't think there's anything that's ever specifically focused on Ed Gein. And I think that's something you could do to be, oh, this is a real life serial killer and kind of the granddaddy of them all, but one where it's been enough time where the families of the victims aren't still alive anymore. And then the last one, you saying Bill Clinton gave me an idea for one, and I don't know if there's been anything that's come out recently that's focused on this person, and that's a season on Harvey Weinstein. And
That was one on my list too. I thought that was when I was thinking of throwing in. That would be a really good one, I think.
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein, I think would be a good option.
And the movie She Said is just out in theaters. This limited release this week, but it's coming out slowly but surely wide, and that's a take on the Harvey Weinstein, kind of a spotlight take on it, like the journalists who uncovered the story take on the Harvey Weinstein. It's getting a lot of Oscar buzz. So if you're a theater goer, maybe you're in New York or LA, but you know maybe in the other major cities it'll be out there pretty soon. Check out She Said.
All right. And with that, I think we're going to pivot over to the things we actually watched on Netflix, and we could kick it off with you saw Enola Holmes 2, starring Millie Bobby Brown and Henry Cavill, former star of The Witcher.
Yeah, current Superman. You know, I think. Look, I'll premise this by saying I have not seen Enola Holmes, the first one, but I decided to watch the second, and I figured if I get lost, you know, I'll just switch to the first one and catch up. But thankfully, the first like 2 minutes are essentially Millie Bobby Brown and getting chased by the cops, running around London in the 19 whatevers, and she literally it's a freeze frame, looks in the camera and says, essentially, I bet you're wondering how I got here. And they do the reverse. And she goes back and recaps the whole first movie for me. And I was like, oh, thank you, Millie. That's what I needed. So that's all I needed. So this is following, if you don't know, Millie Bobby Brown plays Enola Holmes, who is the overlooked younger sister of Sherlock Holmes, but who is nonetheless a detective herself. And the previous movie had her hanging out with Sherlock on one of his cases, and then at the end deciding to make her own detective agency. And now we're picking up where she is a detective, but she's struggling to get any cases because everybody really just wants to go to her brother Sherlock. And when they go meet her, you know, they'll talk to her for a few minutes and they'll be like, so have you talked to your brother recently? And she'll realize, oh, really, I just want to talk to Sherlock. And she's very frustrated about that. But then a young girl comes to her and says, look, I don't have any money. I can't pay you, but my sister's missing. I need your help. And she says, look, I need a case, one, and also my little heart. You know, I want to care for this little girl. She takes her on as kind of this younger sister and also is trying to solve this case. And meanwhile, Sherlock is on a case of his own that he can't quite crack. He's reached out to Enola for some help, and maybe the two cases might be more connected than they think. I had a really good time with this. I thought it was a fun mystery. I think Millie Bobby Brown is really good in this role. She's able to have a lot of fun, more fun than she has with 11. I think she's very held back. on Stranger Things in terms of what she can do with the character. And I think this is much looser, much more fun. She has kind of like a Fleabag tone to her where she'll talk to the camera, and kind of you're along on the joke with her, where she's kind of like winking at the camera, commenting on what's going on. You're in on the mystery with her, kind of solving it with her. So I had a really good time with it. And yeah, Henry Cavill also is a really good Sherlock. He's not in this too much, but when he's in it, he's really fun. I think he has that snarky kind of, uh, he's smarter than everybody in the room kind of Sherlock take. And I think Henry Cavill fits that. He has kind of like a snarky feel to him a little bit. So I think he fits this role really well. And yeah, I'm impressed by this a lot. I'm definitely gonna go back and watch the first one because I thought this was really fun and a really fun mystery. I'm a Sherlock Holmes fan, so I liked this, and it wasn't adapting any specific like Sherlock mysteries. I thought that was a cool thing too, because a lot of these will just take beats of some of the bigger Sherlock stories and adapt them. And this has Moriarty and stuff like that in it, but it's not like a direct adaptation of anything that I've read.
All right. Would you say that's kind of just? I assume it is, but just kind of like a family movie anyone could enjoy.
Yeah, it's definitely a family movie. You don't have to, be a Sherlock Holmes fan. You don't have to be, really paying attention to intensely to the everything. It's a really easy watch, a fun mystery, and yeah, family fun watch for sure. I definitely think that anyone of all ages could get something out of this. Good afternoon fun.
All right. Sounds great. Like a good Saturday afternoon movie.
Yep.
All right. Anything else you got to say about Enola Holmes 2 before I move on to one of the things I watched?
I do not. I have another movie to talk about later that is not quite the family friendly fun time, but I'll get back to that in a second.
All right. And so one of the things I watched this weekend was Killer Sally. If you're a big true crime fan and you haven't watched Killer Sally, I definitely recommend it. Kind of the general plot of this woman who was a big power lifter, bodybuilder in the 80s, is accused of murdering her bodybuilder husband. And it's a very quick thing. It's not like a full 10-part docuseries. I think it's like 3 parts, 45 minutes each. Real quick watch, real solid, real well made. If you're a true crime fan, definitely worth checking out. If you're not really into true crime, you've seen a few true crime things here and there, and it's not really your thing. This isn't like so mind-blowingly well done that you should watch it anyways. I definitely feel like it's for the true crime fan. I really enjoyed it, and I think, like I said, if you're a true crime person, definitely should check it out on Netflix.
I'm looking definitely on my radar. I didn't know this was coming out, and all of a sudden this popped up on my Netflix. So the fact that it's short makes me more tempted because I can't necessarily sit through like these 6-episode, 12-episode true crimes. I don't know want to feel that way for too long, but 3 episodes I can take that.
Yeah, it's definitely well made and worth checking out. And then something you watched, a brand new story, never been told before. Really riveting. Can't wait to see how it plays out. And that is a new version of All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah, this I believe is a third, I want to say, direct adaptation of this, but there's been several other versions. But this is the latest. It's technically a Netflix original. I believe they picked it up from a festival, but it's from the director of The Terror on FX, if you like that. And he captures the tone of this so beautifully. It's a really gorgeous, gorgeous movie. I think if you're a war movie fan, you'll get a lot out of this. If you don't know the premise of All Quiet on the Western Front, this is entirely in German from a German director, so I think that's a cool perspective. And it's because it follows young German boys. They're kind of like excited to join the military during World War I, and they get caught up in the kind of propaganda of for country and everything else, and quickly they join the war effort and realize that it is not quite as not quite as glamorous as maybe they thought it was going to be, and they're sent to the trenches, and it's brutal and it's harrowing. The action scenes are huge and spectacularly big and gory and brutal. There's plenty of characters you built up to care for who then are just viciously killed, and really, really well shot, gorgeous cinematography. I thought it was really beautiful. There's several scenes in here that are going to be some of my favorite scenes of the year, especially because we haven't gotten a lot of big war epics. This reminds me of 1914 it was that came out a couple 1917 that came out a couple of years ago. Not quite as gimmicky, where 1917 had that whole thing of like, wow, it's essentially a one shot.
Shots fired.
Still pretty good. I think unfortunately it's not perfect. emotionally because it's very much trying to make you cry. You know, you have that thing where someone will die and they'll play the strings as loud as they can possibly play, and they're going to show the main character's eyes welling up, and it feels so manipulative that it like loses its effect. You know, it feels like they're trying so hard to make you cry that it doesn't really work too well. But and unfortunately, also I think there's been a lot of war movies, and especially a lot of takes on this specific war movie, and this doesn't necessarily seem like it does a lot new. It just does it all really, really well, you know. So I think if you're a big war movie fan, you're going to enjoy this because it does what you like really, really well, exquisitely, gorgeously. It's shot so beautifully, and the sound design is it's incredible, you know. And but unfortunately, you're probably going to get halfway through and feel like you've seen this before. A lot of the bigger moments feel like whether they were stolen from other movies or almost like direct homages to other movies. Like there's a shot here that feels like it's right out of Paths of Glory. You know, tracking him across the trench with Paths of Glory. Seen that? There's a shot just like that in here. There's stuff like Come and See in here. So it feels like he took notes from some of the other big harrowing war movies and thought that he could just do those and it would work as well. And it doesn't work as well. It works fine. It works well. It's very, very well shot and gorgeous. So I think if you're willing to look past the traditional narrative beats and kind of like the very straightforward emotional play, I think you'll get a lot out of this, especially if you're a big war movie fan, because God, it just looks so good. And yeah, I recommend this for people who are big war movie fans, but not if you're looking for like a totally different new take on the war movie genre. If you just want to see war done to its most well shot way possible, this is it. But if you want to see something totally new that's going to give you a new perspective on things, maybe not this one.
All right. Yeah, it sounds one like if I have the time and free time, especially if it gets nominated for some awards, I'll check it out. But especially, it's nothing I'm like dying to see. That I'm like, oh, as soon as I get a moment, I'm firing up All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah, I definitely think it should be on your watch list because it's something to check
Yeah.
out, but maybe not high on the watch list. You know,
Yeah.
put it on there for when you have a bit of a long afternoon. You want to see some really well shot war sequences. You know, give you a Saving Private Ryan for the weekend. You know.
All right, yeah, I'll definitely try to watch it, especially before the Oscars hit. And I believe that wraps up our Netflix discussion and moves us over to Disney Plus. We got a little bit of news, especially news that dropped today. We got some Star Wars news, specifically The Acolyte. We got a plot description from the StarWars.com website. It says The Acolyte is a mystery thriller that will take viewers into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. High Republic era is essentially about 500 years before the Phantom Menace, leaning about to 100 to 50 years before the Phantom Menace. And it says a former Padawan reunites with her Jedi Master to investigate a series of crimes, but the forces they confront are far more sinister than they ever anticipated. So, definitely intriguing plot. I'm curious to see how it plays out. We also got some cast announcements as well. We have Amanda Stenberg, who was announced a while ago. They were the first cast member announced. All the other ones, they've been leaked, but these are the first official kind of announcements for them. We got Lee Jung Jae, who people will recognize from Squid Game. Manny Jacinto, who people will know from The Good Place. Daphne Keane, who played X-23 in Logan. We got Charlie Barnett, who I've recognized from a few things here and there. Dean Charles Chapman, who played... he was one of the Baratheon sons in Game of Thrones. I'm blanking on his name, but Joffrey's younger brother. And then
Tommen.
Tommen
Yes.
Baratheon, yeah, he played Tommen Baratheon in Game of Thrones. And finally, the biggest shock of them all, and one I'm very excited to see join Star Wars, and I'm hoping they're playing a Sith Lord because that would be very compelling. But I feel like they may be playing the Jedi Master, and that is Carrie Ann Moss. But if she's playing a Jedi Master, I'm excited to see that too. Obviously known for playing Trinity in The Matrix, she was also in the Christopher Nolan movie Memento. So I'm very curious to see what she's doing in the Star Wars universe. But I'm very excited for The Acolyte.
Yeah, I love the premise. I know when they first talked about it, they were saying, "Oh, it's going to be like about a bad guy. They're going to be like the Sith is the main character," and it seems like they're backtracking a little bit already on that. Like they're already talking about they're going to reunite with their Jedi Master. So maybe they're teeing me up for some turning of the cloak here. Yeah, like you said though, Carrie Ann Moss has that Sith energy to her. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we get a bit of a bait and switch where Carrie Ann Moss, the Jedi Master, turns to the dark side, and then Amanda Stenberg, they're playing the Sith who left the Jedi. Maybe she turns they turn back to the light. You know, I could see there being a bit of a swap there because Carrie Ann Moss, really powerful presence. I can't wait to see her with a lightsaber. You know, red, green, blue, purple. You know,
Yellow,
give her a
orange,
yellow one. Give her
whatever.
anything. You know,
Yeah.
give her a lightsaber. Give her a green one. I think that would fit for the Matrix. So
That okay, a green lightsaber would be kind of cool. Like if she's in the black darkness and she fired and the first shot of her is a green lightsaber with her face illuminated in green, tell me that doesn't give you a little bit of excitement. Come on.
yeah, I'd be getting chills already, Joe.
All right.
I like this cast though. Daphne Keene. I was curious what her career would be like after Logan. I was wondering if she would do nothing really, but she's hopefully going to be taken off after this. I really liked her in that, and so I'm curious to see what she's going to be like in this. Is she going to be a good guy, a bad guy? Is she going to be a similar character to Weapon X? Is she going to be kind of like this violent Sith? You know, I could see that.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what she's up to. And some other news, not really news, I guess, just more of confirmation. We're getting Zootopia Plus, which is going to be 6 shorts set in the Zootopia world, are actually going to be dropping this Wednesday on Disney Plus. So if you got some kids and they like Zootopia, or maybe you're just a kid at heart and you like the Zootopia movie, 6 shorts coming your way this Wednesday. Will we be reviewing them? I don't know. Depends on how.
I probably will.
Yeah. All right.
I like Zootopia, so I'll watch these. I wish they were actual episodes. Like I want a Zootopia TV show. To be honest, I really want to get back to that world. I thought it was a really interesting premise. So
Yeah.
I wish they would do more with the Zootopia world than just little tiny shorts.
Yeah. All right, and that brings us to some content that I actually watched this week, and it looks like it's going to be a me-heavy episode the rest of the week. So it's all just stuff I watched, and I watched Director by Night, which is kind of a documentary focusing on Michael Giacchino, known for his composing work. Basically, you throw a you take a pile of movie posters for movies that have come out in the 21st century and throw a rock, and you're probably going to land on a poster that for a movie Michael Giacchino did the score for everything from the Batman to Up. I believe it's Spider-Man into the I can't remember if it's Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. But all around, he's just done great work. I think it's going to be hard to eclipse John Williams as the GOAT composer, but if they were saying someone will eventually eclipse him as the GOAT composer, Michael Giacchino would be my vote for who it could be. But this is very much, I was expecting this to be a lot like the other kind of making of documentaries for all of the other Marvel projects. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've watched one since Black Widow because they're all the same. I've talked about on this show how they're all the same and I don't care. But I was like, I need something to watch for Disney Plus this week. And so I watched this, and I'm going to be honest. To me, this was the best and most interesting one because it wasn't even a making of. The documentary was made by Michael's brother Anthony, and it was just him following him around. And I don't even know like what the focus or purpose of this documentary was going into it. I thought they were just going to be following Michael as he was making the show, but it wasn't even really about that. A lot of it was about like his inspiration and how Michael kind of always wanted to be a director, and he kind of just fell into composing. How he actually went to film school to be a director, but he also trained at Juilliard, and he slowly just kind of fell more into the composing world, and how and his parents are in it a lot too. It's really just kind of more of a thing about Michael Giacchino. So I think if you're a Michael Giacchino fan, it's definitely worth checking out. I honestly don't even think you need to, like for the making of all of the other ones, if you didn't watch the movie or the show that it's about, there's no point in watching it. And like obviously it references Werewolf by Night and it talks about it here and there, but I think if you're a Michael Giacchino fan and you haven't seen Werewolf by Night and you have no desire to watch it, I still think it's worth watching this documentary because it's like a little bit about the making of that. It's a little bit about his youth and his childhood, but it's kind of just about his mental space as a human. And
I really like that. I think that sounds fascinating. I've watched most of the behind the scenes things they put out. I actually kind of enjoy some of them. It depends how stylish they go with it. And this one sounds like they went very stylish with it. It's not really even about Werewolf by Night. So I'm definitely going to be checking this one out. It sounds like something I would enjoy. And yeah, I'm curious to get that look at Michael Giacchino. I didn't realize that he'd trained to be a director in the first place, and this was kind of his dream all along. So yeah, I can't wait to watch this, and hopefully he does some more stuff in the future. Is there anything at the end? Does he talk about like wanting to direct more stuff with Marvel, wanting to do any feature
Yeah,
length films, anything like that?
I wouldn't say like that, but there was a thing of like him, because how like Marvel is very much I mean, it was kind of like, if you know enough about the Marvel making or the Marvel movie making process, how it's very like super collaborative, and how much is the director really directing and how much is it just kind of they're there as one of the people helping doing things, was kind
Mm-hmm.
of like what they said without saying it. And he was talking about how he's been there, he's been involved heavily with a lot of the Marvel projects and working with the directors and seeing their stuff. And he said he was talking with Kevin Feige one day about potentially directing a project, and how, is there anything he would be interested in directing in it. Michael Giacchino kind of made it sound like Kevin Feige, if Michael Giacchino was like, yeah, I want to do Blade or I want to do Fantastic Four, Kevin Feige would have said yes, was kind of the vibe I was getting. Because he's like, yeah, I've always been more a fan of the fringe characters, like something like Werewolf by Night would be kind of what I would want to do. And Kevin Feige's like, what? Kind of like, you could have said anything and I would have said yes. So the fact that you said Werewolf by Night is kind of astounding. But like, he's like, oh, I grew up reading Werewolf by Night comics, so it's kind of interesting that was.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really cool story that they brought him in the room and said, "Do whatever you want," and he said, "Werewolf by Night."
Yeah.
That makes it seem like yeah, he has the passion for it. He wasn't assigned this random character off of a name generator and said, "Make a movie off of this guy."
Yeah, yeah, he definitely like his is hard because, like I said, a lot more of it, a lot of the documentary was more about how Michael Giacchino grew up, like talking to his parents, and it really wasn't about Werewolf by Night at all.
Interesting. I definitely will check it out though. Sounds really unique and compelling to watch.
All right, and another thing I watched this week was on Hulu, and that is it was originally like an ABC 2020 special, and that is Black Panther: In Search of Wakanda. And I think, if you're excited for Black Panther coming out this weekend, definitely worth checking out. It's kind of like a behind the scenes thing, talking about the passing of uh, Chadwick Boseman. Robert and Roberts kind of leads the whole thing as the representative for ABC, talking to the various cast and crew. But it's just kind of a cool. It's hard to say fun, but just like, if you want to just build up that anticipation for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, I definitely would recommend checking this out on Hulu, as far as like a behind the scenes thing, uh, talking about the movie and the production and the making of the movie and everything to do with that.
Yeah, I can't wait for the movie. I have tickets for opening night, IMAX, so I'll watch this to get myself in the mood for it, Joe. I can't wait.
All right, and then breezing through here. Final thing I watched was on Apple TV Plus, and that is the documentary Selena Gomez, My Mind and Me. Um, I grew up a big. It's weird to say a big Selena Gomez fan, but she was definitely like my number one celebrity crush in my teenage years, and so it's kind of interesting to watch. And like, it was pitched as like, or like, as far as the trailers and everything goes, is like this Selena Gomez talking about her mental health and all of that. But the number one thing I got out of this documentary, and my girlfriend and I both watched it, I basically told her, like, hey, I have to watch this for the podcast. And she was kind of like, oh, whatever, I really don't care. But she got super locked into it. And she and I both agreed that the number one thing we got out of this documentary is that, like, Selena Gomez just doesn't want to be famous. She doesn't want to be a celebrity. But I feel like for multiple reasons, she just feels pressured into it, whether it's all of the people on her team that work for her, and just because she feels like she can be an ambassador and do, like, release all this goodwill into the world by her status and her platform. But I feel like if she had the power and ability, she would just kind of go fade into the background and run her makeup brand and not be famous anymore. And I feel like the pressure and all of this, and especially with like the news of Aaron Carter's passing this weekend and all of that, I feel like, I just felt empathy and bad for her, because you could tell she just does not want this life anymore. Which is not what the purpose of the documentary was, but that's kind of, if you read between the lines, that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I think that sounds compelling. I mean, I like Selena Gomez, and I think yeah, you can tell when people become famous, especially at a young age, not always great, you know. And people love to say, "Oh, they're rich, they're famous to get everything that they want," but sometimes that sounds really miserable. You know, everywhere you go, everybody knows you, and everybody knows you're rich, and everybody knows you are influential. That sounds kind of miserable, to be honest. And sure, you get to cry in your mansion, in your Lamborghinis, in your private jets, but that still kind of sucks that you're crying. You know?
Yeah, like the idea of a celebrity just like crashed and burned for me one day when I was comedian Tom Segura was talking about it. I think he was on a podcast or something, but he was on a plane that Brad Pitt was on, and this was a few years ago. And Brad Pitt walked up to him because they were like everyone was boarding and stuff, and he's like, "Oh man, I love all your stand-up specials. I've seen them all like a bunch of times." And Tom Segura, having no idea that Brad Pitt knew he existed, was just like, "You just sit in your house and like watch my stand-up specials." And Brad Pitt's like, "I mean, I can't leave my house. Like, I really can't go anywhere." And Tom Segura had the realization of like, oh, being that famous would be horrible. And like when he said that, I'm like, I can't imagine having that type of life where you can't even like walk into a gas station without five people asking for your autograph or asking for a picture. Like, you can't go anywhere and live a normal life. Like, it's gone. There's a cost to fame and it's heavy, and that's why you see a lot of these people dive into drugs and alcohol and all these things because they're just trying to cope with the horribleness of fame.
Yeah, and you wonder why so many famous people turn out to be kind of weird. I wonder if it's because you're being shut in, you can't have any normal relationships, and that kind of makes you weird sometimes.
Yeah, every single person you meet wants something. No one, very few people just genuinely want to be your friend.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm definitely gonna watch it though. I like Selena Gomez, and yeah, I like the kind of empathetic looks at fame. You know, it's not quite as glamorous as it is made out to be. So I'll watch this, and I gotta have a reason to do the Apple TV. You know, I gotta make it worth my $5.
yeah. So like I said, if you're a Selena Gomez fan, or if you just want to watch like if you just need a reminder that being a celebrity must suck, check out Selena Gomez, My Mind and Me. It remind like that and Director by Night were very similar, where there wasn't didn't seem to be like a full focus. Like maybe they had a concept of what they wanted to do, but it wasn't fully executed. But I don't, both think both were very interesting and worth checking out if that's the type of content you like. But with that, I believe we are moving on to our MVP conversation. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna go first because I really don't have a great selection. Because, like we said at the top, Tristan was much more excited and happy with what he watched than what I watched. And so my pick for MVP of the week is Anthony Giacchino because he made the first kind of making Disney Plus making of documentary that didn't feel like a waste of time. Every single other one, I wouldn't like. The only way I would recommend it to all the other ones is if you watch that movie or show and you love that movie or show and you specifically wanted to see the making of that movie or show. Where this, I feel like could have a broader appeal, and I don't think it would feel like you wasted your time watching it. And just the fact that he actually did one that was good is why Anthony Giacchino would be my vote for MVP.
That's a good argument. I'm not gonna lie. I did feel much stronger about this week for you, Joe, because I have two candidates, and I want to get your thoughts on both of my candidates, and maybe we can figure out a winner here. Because my first is maybe the obvious pick, but I think Weird Al himself deserves a nomination here. The fact that not only did he take such an active role in his own biopic, but the fact that he was so shameless enough that he like took the piss out of himself. He didn't make himself out to be anything more than a joke, you know. And I think the fact that he was able to have such a fun time with his own biopic and turn himself into kind of the parody, I think is a really cool take on a biopic and something that you're not really going to see from anybody else other than Weird Al. So the fact that I think Weird Al got his own personality so directly onto the screen is a really cool achievement, and I gave him the nomination for that. I'm also thinking to go a little meta with it. Sure, Ryan Murphy didn't maybe have a release this week, but he had a pretty big week on streaming this week. You know, he's had a bit of a rough patch in his career, but it looks like he's found his home at Netflix. He got renewed on Dahmer. He got renewed on Watcher. He has American Horror Story killing it right now on Hulu. I think Ryan Murphy is at the top of his game. Once again, he's got a bunch of new stuff coming out, a bunch of series he's producing. I think Ryan Murphy, you know, he's on fire right now, and this is a week for him. He got all this stuff renewed. is stuff that was supposed to be one-offs that were so big, such huge hits for Netflix. They said, okay, let's make another one.
All right, so quick thing, real quick. Forgot I ever watched season 1 of The Watcher. That show fucking sucked. Don't watch The
No.
Watcher. It's boring. It's kind of built up, built up, built up, and then nothing. Don't watch it. Didn't care for it.
There's a second season coming, Joe.
Yeah, not gonna watch it. Sorry I didn't review The Watcher season 1. There it is right there. So I'm ruling Ryan Murphy out of the running for... You can't make The Watcher and then me give you the MVP like the next week. That's just for getting a second season of the same show. Not gonna happen. However, Roku channel did a thing. Their official Twitter account posted like, hey, we're doing a Weird Al Yankovic Q&A. Tweet in your question. Some guy tweeted out, how do I watch in Australia? And Weird Al Yankovic official account replied, Roku's working on it. In the meantime, there's VPN. Very probably no way to watch it legally. I'm sure you have a torrent of other questions. But I have to move along. Sorry. And for that, my vote goes to Weird Al Yankovic for just shamelessly just saying, watch it illegally. I don't care.
Look, why you gotta put it out on the Roku channel? What is even the Roku channel? I didn't know this existed until a couple of weeks ago when this trailer came out for this movie, man. Put it on Netflix. What are you doing? Give us a real release to this. You know, this could have been a big hit. What are we doing on the Roku channel?
But are we saying Weird Al Yankovic isn't the MVP of the week because of that?
No, look, you know, maybe that was the studio's choice.
What studio? It's the Roku channel. I think they made it. I think they paid for this. I don't know.
Did they really? I don't know how this worked actually.
I don't know how the story originated, but either way, MVP of the week, Weird Al Yankovic. He had a cameo. I was awake for that. I saw that. That was a good moment in the movie.
Yeah, I definitely recommend Weird Al for the MVP. He may not get the Oscar, but he got our hearts this week, Joe.
All right, so with that, I believe that wraps up our week. We will be back next week. Oh, do we have a movie of the week next week?
Look, I was thinking we might line it up here. Guillermo del Toro has been kind of on the mind recently, not just from his Cabinet of Curiosities, but he's got Pinocchio coming out pretty soon. I was wondering, Joe, if you've seen the debut film of Guillermo del Toro, 1993's Kronos, streaming on HBO Max. That's my pitch to you. Ron Perlman is the lead here, as well as Federico Lupe. It talks about an alchemist who finds an invention where he just has to give a little bit of vital blood, and it gives him eternal life. What could go wrong, you know? And
I'm gonna be honest
compelling
with
you. horror drama right there.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Haven't watched this movie. Didn't even know it existed until 5 seconds ago. So yeah, let's lock it in. Movie of the week, Kronos. Tristan and I will be reviewing it next week, and so that's something we talked about. I don't know if we talked about it on our last episode, but we've decided, especially like if you notice, it's been a little bit slow as far as big projects that are streaming. Nothing that's like a big kind of banner show right now. No major properties. Obviously, Andor's going, but we're not reviewing that every week. So we decided, hey, let's do a movie of a week on whatever streaming service we think may be light that week. And so we have something to talk about from that service. And so, like we said, HBO Max, Kronos, watch it, and you get to hear our thoughts about it. Or maybe you'll wait to hear our thoughts and then watch it or avoid it, depending on what we have to say. And
if you're buying Criterion's at Barnes & Noble this month, it's half price for Kronos, $20.
All right, yeah, definitely check that out. Anything else you have to say before we end the show?
No, fun week in streaming, Joe. I can't wait for next week. I'm curious to see what you watch, because maybe you'll flip flop. Maybe next week I'll be like, it was terrible, and you'll say, oh, I loved it. We'll see how it goes.
All right, can't wait to give Andy Serkis my MVP of the week next week. So, without further ado, goodbye. Hey, thank you for watching the Movie Change Up podcast. We'd really appreciate if you liked, commented, subscribed, and shared us with anyone you think might be into what we're doing over here. Thank you. Have a nice day.